time for another round of Brandy. Candid conversations over cocktails about all things brand with your hosts, Reilly Newman and Scott Saunders, the brand developers behind Motif Brands.
Why don't you just hit record? You go. Okay. All right. Why don't okay? You want to start this off with talking about brand clarity?
Yeah, I think that's a good topic.
It's a good topic, but it's a broad topic because in all things, a successful brand is comprised of brand clarity.
Yeah.
No matter how you slice it, if a brand is not clear, it's not going to be a great brand.
No, it won't work.
It'll be a brand, but it's not going to be great.
No, it won't work for the owners, for shareholders, or the audience. They'll be confused. And like with anything, it's like you won't know where you're going. It's looking in the review mirror most of the time than actually looking through the windshield and driving forward.
Right.
And I think that's why with episode 1, starting with brand clarity and looking what that means, because with a lot of clients, people who talk to us, it's like that's always a main focus. So I think that's why that was a good first step for Brandy.
Right.
How would you define it?
How would I define brand clarity? I think brand clarity to me is it's not confusing to the audience, to the consumer, to the marketplace in general. You can have a brand sit on a shelf and it has presence in the marketplace. It may not have any consumers, may not have zero audience, but it's on the stage in the marketplace somewhere. And so I think having brand clarity where people know what the brand is, what they value, what they mean, and there's no confusion. And you can have confusion on different levels. You can have confusion of brand in its visual consistency. You can have confusion of brand in its messaging, where it's saying one thing, but then maybe on another channel it's saying something else. You can have brand confusion in trying to be everything to everyone. In which case you're not going to be anything to anyone, because you've got to have that focus. And so I think you can't have focus in your brand if you don't have clarity in your brand.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, because it is, when you think of confusion can change per market or per individual or audience that you're aiming for, because confusion in price, confusion in value, perceived value, anything like that where the audience isn't clear on what they're buying or who they're buying and supporting. And that's why the most specific brands have won out. And that's kind of goes into like being distinct as a brand and really using your strengths to stand out. And there's like this author named Byron Sharp, and he writes about that, of the difference and distinctness. And he highlights that with like brands of being distinct, like an individual is distinct in their own attributes, in their own who they are, right? Mm-hmm. Versus a difference is more a compare and contrast. So you're comparing it to something.
Okay. And
I feel like that's what a lot of businesses do, versus going, no, I'm distinct in my own way, and having that clarity of going, this is who we are brand X, we're not brand Y. And so we're for this kind of person who does this kind of thing on these days, mm-hmm. versus trying to be everything to everyone, like you said, because then you're nothing. You're just bland.
So broaching the topic of clarity, I almost feel like, kicking this series off, we could, have parts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 or beyond. So I think, but yet it's so everything ties in together. It's so hard to just talk about one aspect of brand in general, and not have to touch on many different facilities and attributes of a brand, and all the components that make it going to making a big brand, which is kind of one of the reasons why it wasn't a 5-step process to making a successful brand. When we wrote Brandy, it's 101 nuggets, and maybe beyond. And a lot of them cross over, some of them blur, some of them not repeat themselves, but talk about the same topic, but from a slightly different angle, from a different approach, so that it seems fresh. And that so much of that, there's so many layers to what makes up a brand. It's not just, I have a great looking logo, therefore great. I have a great brand. Because we both know you can have a terrible logo and have a good brand that's successful. And, you know, I've got one or two brands in mind that, man, they make the best this, but their branding, their logo is terrible. Looks like it was made by a 5-year-old, and yet it doesn't deter me from frequenting them and you know, being a consumer. But if there's a great looking brand, great logo, but there's terrible service, or the brand is just, whether it's a product, whether it's a service, it's just lackluster, it's mediocre, it's nothing stellar, then I don't care how you could literally have the Nike swoosh and it's not a great brand.
Fall flat.
Yeah, it would fall flat. So there's no end all. There's so many components to what brings, you know, a great brand. But you brought up you broached the subject of brand clarity. So
and I think that's one of the main things with clients is a lot of it is educating them on that it is everything. Because I think most of the time, just like marketing and advertising, just like anything in business, it gets put in a budget. And so then brand has to abide by the same rules of, what bucket is it in? Is there a brand bucket or is it this pseudo marketing bucket? And they try to kind of categorize these things versus realizing brand is just as important as processes, communication, messaging, marketing. Like, it is everything. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think we kind of have that common thread of like how you do anything is how you do everything. And that's what is consistent. That's what is messaging. That's what is signaling to your audience and getting those points across, because that's what your audience sees. And just like with humans is that we pick up on those, right? And when someone isn't consistent, when they do something out of character, then it's a red flag. And so why should a brand be any different versus when a brand is consistent and a brand is actually behaving how it should based off its promises to the customer, then it makes sense.
Okay. So here's a question, man. So for me, in my background with just visual design over the decades, that's in my wheelhouse. I look at brand clarity from more of a visual consistency thing. And I think new startups will invest a good amount of money even because they understand the value. Many of them, many of them don't understand the value, and they'll go out and they will spend $25 on a template where it's some icon and a company name underneath there, and the artist designer will just basically drop in their name and typeset it in that and save out their graphic files, and that's their logo, and they put it on Facebook and Instagram and on flyers that they've made in Canva, Publisher, and all those things.
Fiverr.
All those great tools that are out there that are inexpensive, allows anyone to do things. But so they have a great logo, but then there isn't greatness in everything else.
Yeah. Because
funds are limited. They maybe can't afford to hire a branding, a brand studio, or a talented graphic designer, or anybody that does that on a professional level that is good, that's going to give them good value and good results. It doesn't come cheap, and so the biggest downside, unfortunately, in achieving brand clarity is being ready to pull the trigger on whatever you do. It's got to look its best.
Yeah.
And I think that's something for brand clarity that how do you work from Reilly, your position has always been more like you're more on the front end with the client and the strategist and the startup, the mechanics and the vision casting, all that stuff. So what do you always tell clients? They're like, I'm on a very tight budget and I need to either launch a great brand or I need to rebrand. And again, rebranding or fresh brand, it still needs brand clarity regardless.
Yeah, and I would say questions are expensive because questions bring clarity. That's why people pay therapists and psychologists so much money. And answers are cheap. You can look up anything on Google or chat and get an answer, but the application isn't relevant because questions drive relevancy and questions drive clarity. So even like a great graphic designer is going to ask questions and probably challenge the client on things that's actually going to push them and actually get them to the root of it, rather than just giving them answers. Because that's what a poor graphic designer will do, is just go, oh, this is the latest trend, or this is the style that I like to do, boom, 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 and bust it out and give it to them. Or on Fiverr or whatever it is. And to me, someone who's going to help you in business is going to ask you questions, just like a good mentor or a good consultant. They're going to ask you questions, and sometimes it's going to hurt, and sometimes it's going to hurt your wallet too. But that's what you're paying for, is being faced with those questions and actually getting to the root of it. Because in those questions, you're digging up the gold, and that's going to add clarity to not only you as a business owner, but also to your marketing, to your messaging, and to your artistic direction and what you're doing as a brand. So to me, it's like when you are strapped on a budget, then it's figuring out, okay, what are the core questions that we need to ask to really get out of this phase, and not just settle for buying cheap answers.
Yeah. Oh, and I think and everything comes in waves. I mean, you look at any startup and or small business that's got a brand. The idea that there's other ways of being consistent. It's like, maybe you can't afford the greatest logo. Yeah. Okay. So again, if we've determined that there are badly designed logos that represent some great brands.
But I think like what you're saying is like it's experience. And
yeah.
When you think of brand and you think of, okay, it's touching every area of your business, from customer service to how you sign off on emails to how you pick up the phone, all that. That's all experience. And I'm one of the few people who probably have called Pixar Animation and left a message, and this is a long time ago. But
you left a message. You actually got through.
Yeah, and that's how I got a signed thing from, what's his name on the Cars poster, the guy who he got in trouble, but I think he's gone from Pixar. But
so maybe that's actually worth some money. Do you still have it?
I still have it. Yeah.
Well, hey,
no,
maybe there's some,
it's when Cars too.
Some cash to be made there.
But I always ask clients, I'm like, how would you expect Pixar's answer machine to sound? And they sit for a second and they think about it, and then they'll throw out a wild answer of, oh, it's probably very animated and very character driven. I'm like, exactly, and that's how it is.
I'm sure. I would imagine Pixar would reach out to Billy and say, hey, we need you to do a voiceover or a computer. Go through our message board, right?
Yep.
Press and have Billy Crystal, voice all of that, and they would do that. And maybe because even someone like Billy Crystal would understand the importance of brand and get it.
Consistent.
Heck yeah, I'm on board, because that's what needs to be done
Yep.
for the sake of the character, for the sake of what the brand means to people.
And just the experience, because like the Pixar experience, the Disney experience, the Starbucks experience, the Apple experience, it's through and through on all levels.
Obviously, there's some great brands to lean on, to look at for going, man, they have brand clarity. So is there a brand, I'm trying to think right now, is there anything offhand that a well-known public brand or something that has struggled with brand clarity, and in what way?
A classic example is like the blue chip ones, like IBM or some of these legacy brands that grew up in a different era where brand wasn't necessarily like the forefront.
They didn't have to try. It was IBM. There was no
exactly. They're international business
they were
machines. It's like General Motors. It's General this, General that. So it was a different era, and you had advertising, and advertising a lot different back then, where you just run an ad and you get sales. But now brand dominates because you don't have single channel sales going on, and so it's created a pickle for some of these companies like Macy's, which is now suffering a lot, where large department stores where they just don't know how to portray brand. And I was just talking to a guy earlier today about Macy's and the whole department store thing, and like where that's going, where the experience is going. Because Macy's versus like a Target. Target has way more brand than Macy's. Like, why is that?
Yeah.
So I think that's part of the transition. But some of these brands that have been around for a long time, they didn't adapt accordingly. And all these are huge, massive companies, but it's still, you got to do it.
Well, and you brought up a cross comparison between Macy's and Target, where Target is always, I mean, even just now with their recent launch of their premium membership, where they're trying to compete with Amazon.
Yeah.
And I mean, Macy's didn't have a curbside picket. They didn't have all the things that Target we saw. And granted, a lot of retailers, a lot of big retailers, everyone adapted, right? Walmart adapted, even Albertsons, grocery stores adapted and stuff. But I think Target, with now unveiling more of a premium service, and they're really, whereas other companies like a Nordstrom's or Macy's, or I mean, it was so weird in our own little town to see J.C. Penney fold up and go away.
Yeah.
And
Classic.
and you know, I
You cried.
I grew up in a generation. You know, I'm like twice your age. I grew up in a generation where I remember the Sears catalogs and the dominance of Sears and any brand that they endorsed, that they housed. It was like, and even dating further back, my parents were huge on antiques, and I remember we had this catalog. It was like a Sears and Roebuck's company catalog from like the 10s, 1918 or 19 something crazy, and you realize here's a company, you know, and I mean, now I feel like now I'm broaching into you know, a different topic of more like sustainability of being a brand and being relevant. But you know, when a great brand loses sight, loses focus, loses its grip in the marketplace, and to see it fold, either because they got to a place where they were confusing as a brand.
Yeah, they didn't have clarity.
They didn't have clarity. And I think,
But isn't clarity like relevancy in its own right? To have clarity of who you are. Like, I was just reading about Costco a little, and Costco having so much clarity in who they are, and like everything's underdesigned. The logo, Kirkland brand, is underdesigned. It doesn't look good.
it's very pedestrian looking.
Yeah, it's very just like, it is what it is. The carts are metal. There's no, you know, smoke and mirrors within the store, concrete floors. You're literally in a warehouse. But they're one of the most successful brands. And
Well,
people,
and how ingenious that they always they always change everything up.
yeah.
Every time you go in, the stuff you're normally there to shop is in a different place, and something new is there, and so they know like
Yep.
rhythm, like customer rhythm through their store,
Yeah.
and what people do and how they move, and so changing it up,
That's what people want, because you're paying for great deals, you're paying for these things, and deals are in of themselves. It's like your expectation being greeted with something that's better than you're expecting. That's what a deal is.
So
right?
okay, you brought up a great example. Let's talk. Okay, let's talk Costco as a brand.
I love Costco.
I be honest with you, we had a membership, and then I realized that I didn't need to buy a 3-month supply of something. Or what I found as a consumer was I was always being introduced to great products, new products, but there's no consumer. Hypothetical, you're looking at getting a gas grill.
Yeah.
You're not gonna. If I was gonna get a smoker, I decide as a consumer, I'm gonna research a smoker.
Where you wanna go with
the
it.
various brands out there in the market, the different classification I'm looking for a smoker. What my type? Oh, this is the type of smoking meats, or I'm gonna want something like low and slow, or I need something that's, you know, got some gas grill capabilities for a final sear. Whatever it is, if I'm in the market for a smoker, I'm going to be looking for that.
Yep.
And I'm going to buy accordingly. And then chances are I'll probably find it on Amazon for the cheapest rate. But bottom line, I guess my point is I'm going to be, being a consumer is number one, Costco is not that great. Because they have one brand of an item and that's it. You have one brand of olive oil. You don't have 3 or 4 different types of. I go to Albertsons. I've got literally, or grocery outlet, or Smart Fountain, wherever you go. There's 4 or 5 brands of extra virgin olive oil, EVOO, that's shouting my name. And as a consumer, I'm making a choice on the shelf or by experience. You go to Costco. It's either Kirkland brand or it's what they have. They might have a smoker.
Yeah.
It's one smoker, and that's to get. If you get a Traeger, you get whatever Traeger.
That's what they have. Yeah.
That they have. You don't have, oh, but I want the 750, not the 550 model. Whatever it is. And they sell a lot.
Uh-huh.
So it's a good thing. But I feel like, from a consumerism with a brand, that's where I feel like as a shopper, I kind of like fell away from it. But Costco is what Costco is. Like you said, the brand's mediocre. Their design's mediocre. The membership cards are, you know, but so then the question is where does Costco have brand clarity?
And just that, like what you said, is that you're paying for a membership, which I was just reading this report about how Costco's profitability, typically the amount of that always matches with their membership revenue. So they're like a membership business, plus other things, but they are the curators of great deals, and they have commitments to their members of never charging more than 10 to 15% of premium per product, so you're never actually getting gouged as a consumer, and that's one of their commitments, and that's shown in a lot of different ways. And that's what I wrote about, was even like their $4.99 chicken and their $1.50 hot dog combo. They've kept that for decades and decades at price, and they lose money on it. They actually lose $30 to $50 million a year on the chicken alone, and that's because it's a loss leader tactically, but strategically it's a reflection of who they are as a brand. And so when you do go in and you go, okay, I can either buy the Kirkland brand of this, which is typically a repackaged, actually a very good brand, like their vodka is like actually Grey Goose, and like they actually do have really good relationships with these brands. But then also the one that is in there has been vetted through Costco's brand and their system and everything, and so you know it's going to be a good alternative. And there's always rotating, but they actually, like with your membership, I feel like that's part of the brand, is like that's what you're buying, that's what you're paying for, is that curation, versus like Albertsons or something like that, where you have this whole slew of different options. And that's actually, it's proven less effective than like even what Trader Joe's does, where Trader Joe's has a fraction of SKUs compared to like Albertsons, and they sell a whole lot more. So it's really interesting. And then Costco is on the extreme side of that, where you do have less SKUs, but they're more deliberate.
You said that, Grey Goose and product that has been vetted by the brand.
Yeah. So you have the association.
As if the brand is a person.
Yeah.
It is a controller. It's a
standard.
Quality control person.
But it's a promise.
The brand. It's been vetted by the brand, but it wasn't identifying one particular person. It's just like the fact that this ambiguous representation of the
entity
company can vet something.
Yeah.
Leans into issues like trust.
Yep.
Like, why does it matter? Vetted by the brand.
Yeah.
Who cares? Does that mean I can trust it? What if it's a brand that's just out to make a buck?
Yeah. But I'm trusting this brand,
you're
Costco,
trusting it,
to
and
not
so the
allow
question
that.
is why? Why is it vetted by the brand? Why, if it's we all know that Kirkland's a brand that it's white label, right? They buy in mass quantity, and they slap Kirkland label on everything, and very much like Trader Joe's model, which is very successful as well. But with Kirkland, you inherently go, I know this is going to be good because it's been, like you said, vetted by the brand. It's got the brand has put its stamp of seal, and that has intrinsic value.
Yeah.
That implies trust. Is that a byproduct of brand clarity?
And I feel like that is Costco's clarity, is like their quality, and that's why they have such a great return policy as well, where it's like you could return anything at Costco, and it's the other brand's fault where they put it on them. And sometimes that's pretty harsh, but it's literally, no, this is what it is. Whenever we'll charge you more for this, this is the quality that we expect. This is how it is. And that's in what Costco chooses to sell within Costco, but also their Kirkland brand. And I feel like that's part of the promise. And like you're saying, it's like when you're buying the membership or you're buying these certain things, that's the promise. And that to me is like through and through. And even in the $1.50 hot dog combo or the $4.99 chicken, they're expressing that. They're expressing that transparency and almost like that vow or that promise of like, we're not going to gouge you. Like, this isn't a trick. This is what it is. You're partners with us.
I was chuckling a little bit because you mentioned the returning things at Costco, and I literally remember when I was in Costco one time and to return something, but there was a guy behind me that literally had one of those big, it's the carts on wheels, but really big one, right? And they literally had bought like a 12-man thick metal poled canvas tent. Something like that. It was like an army tent. It was massive.
It was a house.
And they had it laying out there, no box, muddy, tent poles bent. Like they took it out into like a hurricane, and he walks in with a receipt going, I'm returning it, and wanting his cash back. And I was like, and the fact that I made I made my return because he was behind me, and I stepped back and I just waited a second.
Like, what are they going to do with this?
I'm like, okay, first of all, that's bold, right? I would never do that. I'd be like, dude, if I used it and I trashed it, I'm not going to Just because they can doesn't mean I should,
yeah.
right? I run by a little bit different path. But so I stood back and watched as she's like, looked over, looked at the receipt. Okay, you know, and I'm like, oh my gosh, he's doing it.
It's a miracle.
It is. But just, you know, you mentioned that, and again, does that attribute to the great brand of Costco? Yeah, I would say it does.
Yeah, I feel like that's
Even
part
though,
of part of the promise. Is like, you're gonna like it, and if you don't, it's not a problem. And how much would you pay? Because that, again, on the consumer, that's risk mitigation of them going, okay, the risk isn't on me. Yeah, I'll try that. And that's why these brands, and Costco does a really good job at curating brands, whether it's gluten-free brands or organic, like they've done a really good job. And so then as a consumer, how much more are you willing to try it? And I know my family, my kids have gotten hooked on things that we go, oh heck, let's try it. It's at Costco. And there's that trust factor. And then I end up buying that same thing for months and months and months. And I've gotten hooked on so many great brands from that. And so it's almost like you're paying for the curation of it.
Yeah.
You're relieving the customer of what you call, like, psychologically, of cognitive load. They're not having to make the decision. They're not having to do all these things and do the thinking and trying to decipher between two brands and looking at the back of the label. It's like, no, I don't have to think about it.
So let me ask you this. Okay, another example that you and I we always go for, like, brands that just, like, they set the bar, right? Apple, obviously. Or one of them, I will say, that has always done it right, to me, in my opinion. Okay, so let's take the greatness of Costco. Now, if Costco, I want to talk about, we broached on the subject of brand clarity, and it may or may not be from visual brand.
No, yeah. Costco, yeah, definitely.
So let's talk Costco. Now, if Costco was to rebrand, if Costco, the corporation, everything from their member cards to their visual brands to their website to everywhere you see Costco's logo is a fresh, clean look, and Kirkland. In other words, if Costco was to up their game visually, what would be the added benefits? They've already you just finished talking about kind of what's made them mediocre brand, visual brand. Here's their brand strength. Here's their brand clarity rests in this, right?
Yeah.
If they were to rebrand in a very positive way, what would be, like, what's the impact of that? I'm trying to, like, not negate the visual, but also go, okay, so obviously brand clarity is through all things. So if we're talking about brand clarity, that if having all these great perks and value to the customer, but a mediocre visual. In other words, would you say that covered in fullness, Costco has brand clarity?
I would say so. I think just as much as not raising the price on the hot dog, on the $1.50 hot dog, there's clarity in that decision.
Which, by the way, are the best.
They're the best hot dogs. They are.
In all Frankfurtdom is the best hot dogs.
And that's been decades and decades of that. They've stuck with that
since the dawn of time.
Since the dawn of time,
they've been quarter pound.
They've been the wiener.
Franks have been a crowd pleaser.
But I think the clarity in that decision and them losing money on the chicken and all that is the same clarity they have in the charm of their unassuming brand and the visuals.
To me, I mean, I remember back in the in the 90s when Costco first started emerging on the scene, and the idea was getting things at an incredible value, incredible price. I could get that Traeger grill, but I can get it cheaper at Costco. Yeah. Right? So
and return it.
After I've blown it up after Thanksgiving or something. So if they're value conscious, this would lean into a topic of if Costco was to make themselves to look and be perceived in packaging and brand, right, like Apple.
Yep.
Would that be a disservice to the current brand because Costco's it is associated with value, and so being just average in greatness, because if it looks super sick and sexy, and if it looks luxurious,
very sleek and
right,
premium,
then it is. So it would be weird to have. It's just like if you're trying to make it look like it's Gucci, but it is the cheapest on the market. There, would you say that is having lack of clarity in brand? Because you're appearing to be one thing, but the audience that shops value conscious, that shops via value channels, and their product line and their price point, everything else is opposite. So in that case, I guess it falls back to going, hey, trying to have the best logo isn't necessarily the ultimate goal, because you could have the best logo, but it falls flat if it's a disconnect.
Yeah, and just like with anything, it's like the visuals or any communication or messaging, that's to support the position in the strategy. And so even if they start acting more premium, like Target or Apple, it's like those are premium brands where they are actually they're charging you more. And part of the Costco promise as a brand is that they're not going to gouge you, and that's through and through, from the chicken to their identity to the visuals, all that, to their website and how clunky it is. It's they're not taking advantage of their users. And again, they have members. Apple kind of has members. They're going that way, but it's on that path. But Apple, when you're buying Apple, you're buying a premium product, and then that's reinforced by the visual identity, the messaging, the boxes, the user interface, and the product design and everything. So it's all these things reinforcing, and Costco is on a totally different spectrum, where they are value focused, but what that value is to their members.
No, that's a good point.
And so I think to like what initially kicked it off was having that clarity. It's like having that amount of clarity where no, we can sacrifice not looking the sleekest or the sexiest or any of that to reinforce our promise to the members they're literally paying our profitability, like Costco's imprint. But you look at Apple, is that people are paying the premium. That's Apple's. That is literally their profitability, is that people are paying premium. They're paying $1,000 for a phone, which wasn't done before. Apple did that, and Apple's brand allowed that. They allowed the entire market to now start doing that, and so that's what people are paying for, and so that's what they expect. They're paying for the premium. But in Costco's case, you're paying for the value. You're paying for the access and the curation. Mm-hmm. But that's clarity. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so how that applies to small business, and that's frank in the sense of getting your ducks in a row and understanding like your distinctness of what makes you. What are you value? Are you premium? Why are you special? And that's not looking at like Costco, for example, is again, it's different because it is distinct. It's different because it does distinct things like losing $50 million a year on chicken. Kroger's doesn't do that.
Yeah.
And Trader Joe's is distinct because everything is Trader Joe's. There's a personality. There's a theme to it. The employees dress a certain way. They act a certain way.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the golden key to it, and then everything through and through. Because even Trader Joe's, their identity is not. Their visuals aren't like sleek and sexy.
No, they're not.
And all
there's
that.
times when I as a designer, I shop at Trader Joe's every time I come home and look at product, and I look at some that are like the package is like, oh yeah. The other ones I'm going, okay, this was handed to designer B or C on their design team, on their in-house design team, because I can tell it's lackluster.
Yeah.
Or wow, they cranked that out in 20 minutes because they had such a tight deadline. Because that's what maybe a corporation like Trader Joe's does. It has regional offerings as well as national.
Got to get it out. We got to meet. Yeah.
So, but yeah, you brought up a good point where even the frequent flyer has been it birthed a vibe of vintage wood engraved Victorian era clip art with text and kind of back in the merge of the mid 2010s with the kind of I always say that like the hipster movement, that whole like ode to the vintage, ode to the antique, to the way of life, right? That started that whole movement. Trader Joe's was kind of on the forefront of that too at the time.
They're probably part of it.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, their logo, their word mark, their type. But it's always been that idea. To me, it's always. ever since the birth, as a Disney fan, I've always been associated with Trader Joe's, with Trader Sam's.
Oh yeah.
In Adventureland.
Yep.
And so the idea that the typography is rather crude and slightly carved.
Yep.
Execution and just its vibe. Trader Joe's. It's supposed to be almost rustic. It's supposed to be unpolished. It's supposed to be
come from far lands.
It is what it is, and I think that's part of the clarity that Trader Joe's has. Is that you're going to be the sense of like exotic and a trader, like you're assembling, you're a merchant from all corners of the globe, bringing in the best of all, and as a merchant and leaning into that, buys into people that are into, Whole Foods and a lot of the different movements of the food market with organic and
international,
gluten-free and all these things, healthy eating and all those things. They've always leaned into that because they know Trader Joe's knows exactly who their customers are.
Yeah, no, they do.
Yeah, and even to their detriment, my biggest struggle. I was commenting about it with actually the last time I was in Trader Joe's. I was talking with the teller about just being a big fan. I go, you like the Costco that's always introduced, because they always go, you get up there and they go, well, did you find everything Did you find everything you're looking for? And I usually, as they're going through my cart, going, well, yes, and then some, because I usually bring out like, these caramel coffee almonds or something that is like, where the heck did this come from? This is, or their snack aisle where it's like, oh my gosh. And I tell them, I go, you guys are like you're like the small scale Costco where you're always changing things up, introducing me to new things. But then I'm like, you get me hooked because I feel like I have to buy in bulk because I know in 2 weeks it's going to be gone and no longer offered anymore. Yep. So there's that consumer urgency. And I said, but I know that you're not the one-stop shop. They don't have brand names. Some exceptions, but
that's a different experience.
You can't buy everything you need in a week of groceries at one stop. And but has that ever faltered them? No. Because they know so well their customer, they cater their customer, and just like me, I don't mind. I got to hit at Trader Joe's and I got to hit up one of the other stores, maybe a third store, right, for my weekly round of grocery runs.
Their clarity as a brand led to your clarity as a consumer. And you understanding, this is how Trader Joe's acts. This is how I act when I go in Trader Joe's. This is the experience to expect. These are the products to expect.
This is my expectation.
Yeah.
I know in advance, and I don't fault them for it because they meet my need on so many other levels.
And you enjoy it.
And I enjoy it. Their customer, consistent customer service, everything about it. If I have any questions with a stock person, I'm looking for something,
they know.
And you go to any other store and I encounter hit or miss.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally different experience.
Whether I'll get good service, mediocre service, stellar service, or just service like, just get me the heck out of here.
Yeah, that is that clarity. I think that's a cap on it.
Yeah, I think my glasses run dry, and the 5 o'clock hour has rung its due course. So, but I think we definitely have broached the subject. I think brand clarity involves so many aspects. It's not just one thing. And if anything, it's the filter by which we should evaluate the brand through this lens of how clear is my brand?
Yeah.
How clear is what I stand for, how I connect with customers, how I'm valued by them, and how I communicate that with consistency in everything that the brand touches.
Yeah. For not only your sake, but the sake of the customer as well.
Yeah.
Because then they'll know. All right. Until next time.
Cheers.
Cheers.